Frida Kahlo is an artist that needs no introduction. She's probably the most famous female artist of the 20th century. But to give you one anyway, Frida is famous for her portraits and self-portraits. Her works explore ideas related to identity, colonialism, race, gender, and most specifically, herself. Her works are so hugely personal, and I think in that way, they tap into something universal that so many people connect with. Not only because Frida put her own face and her body within her paintings, but also because she drew on her own life, not necessarily in the most literal way or linear way, but she drew upon her own experiences and her own emotions and made artwork that resonated with thousands and millions of people. This exhibit is a collection of photographs that were originally within Frida Kahlo's possession. These come from her personal archives. These were her belongings. And as we move through the exhibit, you'll notice that so many of them have been altered by her own hand, that she's written on them, or that she's left her own impressions. This collection of photographs was actually sealed to the public for about 5 decades following Frida Kahlo's death in 1954. They didn't become publicly available until 2007, so 5 decades that these were sealed away. And it's part of the reason why we're so fortunate today to be able to have them and to exhibit them and to be able to step inside Frida's world, inside of her mind. But what's so interesting about this particular collection, in addition to the fact that these were Frida's own personal belongings, is that they give insight to the artist that we didn't have for that entire time that they were kept in archives. So there are a number of instances throughout this exhibit where there are photographs that turn on their head certain assumptions that we had about Frida Kahlo, assumptions that we had about her heritage, her background, about the way that she saw herself and the way that she thought about herself. This is a window into her world. Now, Frida Kahlo, her photos, is 241 photographs in an exhibit here at the Springfield Museum. They originally come from about 6,000 images that are kept in her archives, and these were the collection of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera, their combined collection. So within this exhibit, we see representations of their life, of the way that they saw themselves and wanted to represent themselves visually. We also see this treasure trove of things that they collected over time. Pieces that were just sentimental to them, that attracted them for aesthetic reasons. It's really a really intimate way of getting to know Frida Kahlo by exploring her world through photographs. It's fascinating that this is an exhibit of photographs pertaining to the life of Frida Kahlo when her own father, Guillermo Kahlo, was an established photographer in Mexico City. And so we can partially think about this collection of photographs in this exhibit as an extension of the love that Frida had for her father and his influence on her, particularly in the person that she became later on in life. Now, of all his children, it is true that Frida Kahlo was Guillermo Kahlo's favorite. And I think that he said that she took the most after him personally. They were very alike in mind. And it was actually his oil paints that she touched for the first time when she was turning towards art during a stint of recovery. And it was, I think, his ethos, his way of seeing things, his perceptive view of the world as a photographer that influenced her so profoundly. By all accounts, Frida Kahlo was her father's daughter. Now, when Frida developed polio at age 6, it was actually her father that she described as being the most there for her. Out of her 2 parents, that he was the most nurturing towards her. I think that he, through shared experiences of health issues, he had vertigo growing up, really understood where she was coming from and was able to empathize on a deep level. Growing up, Frida Kahlo posed in portraits for her father. So she learned at an early age these important ideals of self-representation and self-image. How do you convey who you are visually without saying a single word? Growing up, Frida, of course, posed in portraits for him. And on top of this, I would say that she learned these aspects of composition and of using visual motifs in her work from him. And included in this exhibit are actually a couple of photographs that were taken by Frida Kahlo herself, which is a departure from her normal realm of oil painting and what she did in terms of portraits and self-portraits. I would say that this exhibit is a different way of seeing Frida Kahlo, and it's in part ode to her father, his influence on her. Now, this exhibit is divided into 6 sections, and they detail different aspects of Frida Kahlo's life. So we open with origins, where we talk about Frida Kahlo's heritage and her family, particularly her matrilineal family, the influence of her Mexican heritage through her mother's side. The next section after that is La Casa Azul and La Blue House, which is where she grew up. It was her sanctuary and where she lived as a married woman, a place that she returned to throughout her life as a sanctuary. Another part of this exhibit explores her broken body. So Frida Kahlo's struggles and triumphs over certain health issues and what I would describe as periods of tragedy in her life. This exhibit also explores politics, her own connection to politics, particularly through Diego Rivera, who they shared certain ideals. And I would say my favorite part of this exhibit is the part that details Frida Kahlo's loves. So there is a part of this exhibit that details Frida Kahlo's love for Diego Rivera, of the various lovers that she had throughout her life, as well as family and friends. I would say that this is a well-rounded look at who Frida Kahlo was as a person, and it gives you a kind of behind-the-scenes glimpse of who she was, keeping in mind that she would go to galleries as an artist to present herself in a specific way, but behind the scenes, this was who she really was. If I were to describe the second part of this exhibit, La Casa Azul, the Blue House, in one word, it would be sanctuary. This was Frida Kahlo's sanctuary, and it was a way that she represented who she was on the inside through her choice of interior design and in the way that she cultivated her space. A place that she would attract many visitors from across the world and be hospitable towards in La Casa Azul. In Frida Kahlo's late teen years, her father, who was a photographer, Guillermo Kahlo, went through a tough period of time financially. And it was during this period of time that La Casa Azul actually emptied out of many of its original belongings. This was a house that Frida Kahlo was born in. This was where she was raised and grew up alongside her siblings. And during this period of time, in order to make ends meet to pay the mortgage, they actually sold a lot of these heirloom possessions that passed down through the family. So a lot of finery and decorations that Frida Kahlo grew up around, imported from Europe, were sold in order to make ends meet. Now, what this did mean is that in her early 20s, when Frida Kahlo did move here with Diego Rivera as a newly married couple, they were able to decorate it as a blank slate to reflect who they were. And so taking a bit of a different directional term in terms of decoration, they represented their own values about representing indigenous culture, Mexican authentic culture, and supplied it with heirlooms and crafts by local artisans. And they made it something that reflected their inner state and was an oasis that they could return to. So I would say that La Casa Azul is a place that they would return to throughout their lives while they're traveling, going to galleries in the United States and abroad in Europe, that this was where they could come and recollect themselves. So possibly this is my favorite part of the exhibit. It's the collection of photographs of Frida Kahlo throughout the ages, and also specifically of this picture of Diego and a number of friends with Frida in the courtyard of the Casa Azul, and you really get a sense of how hospitable Frida Kahlo was and how nurturing she was, that she wanted to be surrounded by the people that she loved, her family and her friends. Something that many people do know about Frida Kahlo is an incident that happened early on in her life that changed the trajectory of her entire life, leading her ultimately to become an artist. Now, Frida had been coming back from school with her high school boyfriend when tragedy befell. And something that I would say about Frida Kahlo's life in general is that with tragedy came great transformation. And it was actually this pivotal moment that proved to be a turning point in her life, leading her to become an artist in the first place. Now, many people are aware that when Frida Kahlo was 18 years old, she was intercepted
And the injuries that befell her from this particular accident, I don't think can be understated. This was a significant event that happened in Frida's life, and one that she would feel the ramifications for many years afterwards. Now, there are a collection of photographs in this section of the exhibit called Her Broken Body, which illustrate the depth of pain and suffering that she overcame as an artist, things that fueled her own art and the things that she created. They also show another side of her as well, which is that even through enormous pain and suffering, that she was someone who had such a dynamism for life, really was passionate, and showed up in, I think, really unexpected ways. And we see here, in these particular photos that were taken by Nicholas Murray, this other side of her. I think a side that might surprise other people, where she's mischievous, where she's happy, where she's uplifted. And we see this all happening in the context of recovery. So to say that Frida Kahlo's life is defined by tragedy, I think is a fair assessment, but I would also say that this was a period of time when she was recovering from her various health ailments that was an opportunity for transformation. That particular incident when she was 18 years old was ultimately what impelled her to be an artist, as it was during that recovery that she found oil paints for the first time. And throughout her life, when she was going through these stints of recovery, it would fuel in many different ways the different paintings that she would create and the visions that she would have for her art. Now, this is an exhibit of photographs that are priceless artifacts and artworks. What I like about them is that they're small little windows that you can get up close to and really feel absorbed into Frida's world, the way that she saw things and what really mattered to her. But in addition to this being an exhibit of priceless artworks and photographs, we have to keep in mind that these were actually Frida's personal belongings. These were her possessions, and she kept them carefully and in some cases casually as her own. Now, as you go through the exhibit, you'll notice that some of these photographs have been marked or even damaged in a very deliberate way. Frida has cut herself out of photographs, she's ripped them apart, she's written her own little notes on it, things that she wants to remember about the people that they capture. But there's no particular photograph that is quite as unique as this one of Diego Rivera with the full lipstick mark on it from Frida. I think really indicating that not only was Diego someone that she loved and cherished, that she chose to spend her life with, but that the two of them really had a deep bond that surpassed a lot of her other connections with other people. That despite their hardships and turbulences, they really knew each other on a deep level. And we can see that she elevates him here with that particular lipstick print. Now, to say that Frida and Diego might have had a tumultuous marriage would be an understatement. And to say that Diego was probably unfaithful to her, that he was definitely unfaithful to her, is also an understatement. But with all that, and I think with the necessary flack that we could probably give Diego, is I do want to emphasize that these were two people that really understood each other creatively and artistically. At no point did Frida or Diego ever take back the enormous compliments that they gave each other about their art. In fact, Diego was one of the first people that understood Frida's vision in her art when she was first showing him her paintings at an early age of like 21, 22. So really, these were two people that believed in each other's vision and stayed with each other throughout their lives. And this particular photograph of Diego Rivera, I think, is one of my favorites.